Engage fluo injectors.
Engaging fluo injectors.
Fluo reactors at 80%, sir.
Fluo containment field is destabilizing.
Emergency fluo containment protocols now. All hands brace for impact.
Brace for impact in 3, 2, 1.
And we're back with another episode of World 1-1 Podcast. Before we jump in, a quick tease on the third half of the show this week. We're going to be taking a deep dive look at AI in video games. With that out of the way, real quick, make sure you subscribe and share to this podcast so that you can make all your friends suffer right along with you if you're listening to this. And in the link, in the show notes, you'll find a link to our Discord where you can jump in and come chat with us. And a quick shout out to our awesome, amazing sponsor, Imaginary Authors, helping you up your scent game. More about them right before the break. With all that out of the way,
Choose your fighter.
I am, as always, your host, Ron the Wall. Joining me this week, for the first time in a goddamn dog's age, is Chris John.
Hello, Larry.
Oh, what is up? God, like I said, we haven't recorded together since Soul Accessibility back in the spring, and then I'd play that for $1, which, let me tell you, if I get the gang back together, I would do that again in a heartbeat. Because I'd play that for $1 was a good time.
One time.
So
yeah.
I don't know. It's
Finding those bargain bin deals was always great.
Dude, that show still sits on my back burner. I'm like, look, if the opportunity comes up, I will fire that up again instantly, because that was entirely too much damn fun.
Yeah.
So, and there were some really good ones, and the terrible ones were at least usually awful enough you had fun making fun of them.
Right. right.
So
a lot of suspect games there for sure.
oh god, yeah, no, there were some awful ones, but man, some of them were so blatantly awful it was somehow at least worth experiencing just to know how awful they were. Well, speaking of playing games.
Oh my gosh!
Video games.
Chris, what have you been playing this week?
What have I been playing? I've been playing there's been like kind of like a rotating list of games. I've started to get into Lethal Company because everyone seems to be getting into that game now, and it is
everyone getting into this game?
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard about this game.
A tiny bit.
Yeah, it is a 4-player. I guess you could call it survival horror-ish kind of game. You're essentially
going the Left 4 Dead route.
Not really, because there's no combat involved. It is you're 4 people working for a very seedy company that you have to collect scrap in these particular space or moons and fancy weird areas, and you've got to do it in a certain amount of time. You have essentially 3 days to fill this quota for them, and yeah, it's the closest thing I can describe is like, I don't know if you ever played Deep Rock, but it's kind of like that, where you're working for a company and you're just like kind of mining whatever it is. But in this one,
you mentioned some of that, and my brain went to like Hard Space Shipbreaker.
A
little bit.
But it is a cooperative game. You do have to stick together. You have to play, and and why I say it's horror is because the planets that you visit are not you're not alone. So there are creatures that will attack you and take you out one by one. And the really cool part about it is the proximity chat. So and the audio overall. The game looks really crappy, like it looks like but like in a humorous way,
right?
And
it's intentionally lo-fi.
Yes, exactly. It's intentionally lo-fi, and
I can get behind that.
But again, the audio is what really like just takes it to another level, because you can hear like the scraping of like this creature in the shadows and stuff like that, and like there's some creatures that will like try to suffocate your friends and stuff like that. So you will see you'll hear their voices start to get muffled because this thing's it's just
Ooh.
crazy.
I'm a
it's just a
sucker
really
for
good job.
boss ass audio design like that.
Yeah,
Like the
yeah.
OG Dead Space lives rent free in my head because of
Yeah.
the audio design. It just does.
Yeah.
Like hearing something skittering around 2 decks above or below, or
right.
you know, it's just choice.
Yeah.
And so when that comes into play, especially now in a multiplayer capacity with that proximity, I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
okay, you've
Yeah.
got my attention.
I guess the other game that's kind of close to this is Phasmophobia. I don't know if you heard
Okay.
about that, but kind of like that, where you're it's a cooperative game, and it's a ton of fun. Like it's still in early access, so you can get it for really cheap. I think it's like $10 or something like that. Maybe because of the holidays, maybe they'll have a discount. Who knows?
Yeah.
But it is
Sounds like
It's a
even
good
at
time.
$10 full price is not awful.
yeah, exactly. So I've been playing that. I've been jumping into Remnant 2 because it's on Game Pass now.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been having a pretty good time with that. I had my issues with the first one because the first one's co-op didn't work properly, so I was very annoyed about that. I tweeted at them several times and ignored many times, even to their support, which they just completely ignored. So that was kind of messed up. But this one actually works, at least between Game Pass subscribers or Xbox
Xbox and
people-
PC.
Xbox PC. That seems to work. I mean, you have to still have it on the Microsoft Store or whatever
Right.
platform, but like it won't work with the Steam. There's supposedly a way to link an Epic account, but that hasn't worked. That hasn't worked. That button doesn't work. But yeah, I've been having fun
It might
with
be
that.
one of those things that's planned and coming, and they've got
Maybe.
pieces in place, but not all of it yet.
Maybe, but then why even show it? I don't know. Why show it in the UI? So yeah, I've been having fun with that. It's been pretty unique with the boss fights and stuff like that that have been happening. So yeah. And what was the last thing I was playing? The last thing I tried out because it just got released after the Game Awards was the finals.
That looks awesome, dude. I saw
so-
that back over the summer, and I was like, this looks highly fucking entertaining.
It's
And this
yeah,
is not
so
my
it is-
usual jam.
right, and it wasn't for me. Like I'm like competitive like PvP shooter or whatever. I'm like
Right.
But the kind of fun part about it is the destructible environment and how the world just you can just have things collapse. And from what I understand, they're former DICE designers and devs that worked on this. So I was like, oh, okay, now I see that it makes sense. But as I was playing this last night, I started to kind of be like, I don't know if I'm going to keep playing this game because there's just certain things about it that are a little odd. Like the UI in the beginning is just a little confusing because like you have your player or your character type, and then you have like loadouts, but like the way that they've like described things, it's just I don't know, it's very confusing. And then melee is way overpowered. Like melee weapons are just ridiculous, and so yeah, I mean these are things I'm sure they'll fix, but it's like right now I probably like put a hold on it. But it is free to play, so you know there's no free
Worth
99.
every
But
penny.
yeah, they try to, but they do try to push their battle pass and stuff like that too. So
Yeah.
be prepared for that. So, but yeah, that's been my week so far.
Okay. So most of my week has been completely apeshit. For the most part, as a result, I've basically been microdosing video games this week.
Okay.
So before I get into that, I'm going to share this thought with you real quick because I shared it with one other person because I was thinking about it while I was watching the Game Awards and they were showing the new Jurassic Park thing. I'm like,
Yeah.
why has nobody taken the Left 4 Dead formula and done it with fucking dinosaurs?
That's a good question.
Why do we not have Left 4 Dead like Jurassic
Jurassic
Park?
Yeah.
Holy
That's
shit,
fun.
why is this not a thing?
Yeah.
So,
Maybe
Right.
because of the licensing. Maybe because of
The-
licensing or whatever.
you don't even have to license it. You could just do,
Dinosaurs
Left 4
in a
Dead with
park.
Yeah. I don't care if it's officially licensed Jurassic Park. Just let
Right.
me play this game with dinosaurs instead of zombies.
I guess the closest thing we have right now is like Exoprimal, but that's it's not a very good game either. Though.
No. So, there's that. But yeah, now that thought's going to live in your head and you're going to be irritated that it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And then you're going to wonder why you hadn't thought of it until now.
Yeah. Well,
Because it only makes so much sense.
Yeah, it totally does. That would be
Just
fun.
like,
That would be.
oh, bring me this. Anyways, so microdosing video games this week. I've kind of bounced around to a handful of like mobile handheld things. I've been bouncing between Luck Be a Landlord, which I keep coming back to in small doses, and I really should go back to it for like an extended session you're gonna hate it. It's not your jam, but it is a rogue. But they wrote. Here's the thing, they roguified slot machines.
What?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
so it's every run you start with a nearly empty slot machine in terms of like what shows up on the spinners.
Okay.
And every spin, you get to pick like one or two things to add in, and they all have different effects in different ways they interact with each other. Some only interact if they land next to other things. So you're kind of playing the odds and gambling a little bit, but you're not like gambling to lose money. You spin, you get money, and the goal is to try and make sure that you've got enough money within X amount of spins to pay your landlord the rent. And if you get to a point where you get to you have this many spins to reach this much money and you don't make it, that's the end of your run, and you start over again. You can do a run in like 20 minutes.
Okay.
And it's a great little microdosing game, truth be told, but there's a surprising amount of depth in it in terms of figuring out how everything works together, working out the odds, the statistics. It's like, well, I can take a chance on this has a high payout, but I've got a real low chance of this landing next to something that I need it to land next to in order for it to kick off that payout. All this, and it's really kind of neat. It's like $5.
Oh. Okay.
You can get it on mobile, which is where I got it, or you can get it on Steam. But it's one of those that it feels like it makes more sense on mobile. It just fits right. Like, I don't want to be attached to my desk to play this game. I want to be able to sit in my car while I'm waiting for my kid at school to pick her up and play for 20 minutes and then fold up my phone and put it away. That's just right. Now, I will say my only real gripe here is that the interface needs a little bit of work. And it's such a stupid little thing, but it's one of those things that when it's wrong, you can't help but notice, is that like the bounding boxes for where you can touch something to select it are too fucking small. Like, they should include like an entire row of info instead of just an icon. It's a weird ergonomics thing, but it just makes you feel like you needlessly have to reach too far for things when I should be able to one hand this the whole time. But other than that, it's a neat little game.
I'm
Like
just looking at it right now. Yeah.
It's got visually, it's not much to look at.
No, I don't know why, it just kind of reminds me of Vampire Survivors for some reason.
It's got that super simplicity to it.
Yeah,
it does. I mean, obviously it's wildly different in terms of what you're doing, but it's got that super simplicity to it, and that's where the magic is. Somebody figured out how to strip something down to its barest essentials, put an element of randomization into it, some controlled luck, and said, here's the game. And they did really good with it. Like I said, I'd tweak a few things just in terms of the interface and the bounding boxes for selecting it, but other than that, it's a great little time killer when you got 5 minutes in the line at the grocery store while you're waiting for the 17 idiots in front of you at the self-checkout that can't figure out how to weigh their fucking produce.
That's the worst.
Yeah, I refuse to use self-checkouts on pure principle at this point. I don't care if I've got one item or 20. No self-checkouts. I refuse.
Yeah.
So
I mean, they have to have like 30 of those first, so you can avoid that person. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So beyond that, a couple of rounds in Magic Arena. I still keep going back to that, and I'm not to a point yet where I'm I'm ready to jump into some of their events, but I still like going in and playing and hitting that nostalgic feel of playing Magic back when I was in like middle school and high school.
Yeah.
So, and it's a very easy way to get in and out of a game in not a lot of time. There's always somebody to play with, and if there's not, you can play the computer. They've got some decent little challenges up there that you can use to build up your available library to start with. And well, yeah, they've got the whole, monetize buying packs of cards shit. There's still, like, they give away so much.
Oh, do they? Okay.
Dude, it seems like every time I turn around and open it up, I've got like 7 packs of something waiting to be opened for free. Like, cool.
Okay.
At
I
no
have
point
a friend-
have I
yeah.
felt compelled to need or want to buy anything from their shop. I just have enough to play and have fun. And that's okay. I can still go in and, tweak around with decks and stuff. I can pull stuff apart and rearrange it with other odds and ends and bits and pieces. And similar to what Hearthstone did with their I think it was like their dust mechanic or whatever it was. If you had an abundance of something and you wanted to, scrap it for like 5 fairy dust or whatever, and you needed one specific card, you could spend X amount of fairy for that card. Here, instead, they've swapped this out for you get rarity cards or rarity wild cards. So like common, uncommon, rares, and mythic rares. And if you get one of those wild cards, you can turn one of those in for a specific card of your choosing of that rarity. And you can pull those out of packs as well, which, like I said, they give them away like nobody's business. So, like, and not just, this is the new set. Every once in a while, I open it up and I've got like a pack from their Lord of the Rings set. Okay. I just wish there was a little more presence of some of their secret layer stuff. Like, I really want to see the Doctor Who stuff show up. And apparently they're doing another round of Doctor Who secret layer stuff for Magic. But I think I'm realizing too, I do have a couple of things that feel like they're lacking from Arena that I really want to see just in terms of modes. Like, I really would like to see more than just the one-on-one. Like, bring me two-headed giant mode. Two-headed giant was awesome. It's where it's 2-on-2, and each team plays as a single player with a single pool of health.
Oh, that's cool.
But you're each playing with your own decks. And so it was a really fucking cool mode. And as a poly person with, a wife and a partner who is married, I'm like, this would be a lot of fun. We could do teams, couples on couples just for fun. Yeah. So, which it was something that actually came up, and I had to look to see if two-headed giant mode was there, and I was sad when it wasn't, because all 4 of us would have played together.
I think Hearthstone's coming out with a 2v2 mode or something like that.
All right, I got away from Hearthstone because Hearthstone, I loved Hearthstone when it started, but then when the updates started coming out, my problem hit, and I just went full stop when they started changing cards out from underneath me.
Oh.
Because they'd update and change and tweak cards for balance.
Yeah.
But the problem is if those were in my decks, it fucked with the way my decks worked.
Got it. Okay.
I'm like, I don't like this, because then I have to go around and screw. I'm like, no, I built in tune to this the way I wanted, and now it doesn't work right. So
that's crummy. Yeah.
Right.
So now you're saying Magic doesn't do that?
No, like because Arena is mirrored to the actual physical card game. You can't change physical cards that people have. Right. So I'm like, I'm safe here. Now, they have other things they can do, which recently they've been talking about, upcoming and recent updates to the banned and restricted list. But that's always been a thing in Magic. That's not anything new. And it doesn't, like, if I have if I have a deck built and ready to go, it doesn't change the way the cards in those decks work. Now, if something in that deck gets banned or restricted, I can't play that deck in certain formats, maybe.
Okay.
Or maybe I pull a couple copies of that card out of that deck and swap in something else to supplement. But nothing changes the way my deck works unless I change it.
Got it. Okay.
So
Yeah, a friend of mine has been trying to convince me to try Magic for quite some time, and I'm like, I don't know about that.
Arena's the way to do it. Zoe's not a big card game person, but
Yeah.
They're actually starting to get into it by way of Arena, because Arena has a very well done tutorial to teach you the basics, the mechanics, and much like any other digital card game, one of the nice things is that, you know, you don't necessarily have to hold all the rules in your head all the fucking time.
Okay.
You know, it lays everything out. It gives small, quick descriptors for effects and abilities and everything as you're going. It makes it very, very accessible to learn. Like, honestly, Arena is one of the best ways you can learn how to play Magic if you don't know.
Okay.
And then, like I said, from there, they give you plenty. So you'll never be desperate for, like, man, I really want to go further in this, but I don't want to drop. You don't need to. There is so much there that they just give away at no cost. Go nuts. Now, for seasoned Magic vets that have been playing for 20 years, Arena is going to be lacking some things that you probably want. Like, one of the biggest, most obvious things missing is Arena doesn't support Commander format. And Commander is huge in Magic.
Okay.
Like, it's one of the biggest go-to formats, almost to the point where it's superseded like the traditional formatting of Magic. So, and that's one of the things. I'm like, I look at it and I go, this could be neat, but Jesus, Commander decks are expensive. Like, the pre-built Commander decks usually range from like $60 to $100.
Oh wow.
So, but there you go. That's Arena. Past that, I actually stopped and checked back in with Marvel Snap this week too, which I hadn't touched in a while. And I cracked out a couple of games and bounced back out. Had a good time. I'm like, I've had my fill, and I'm gonna go piss off with something else now. And Snap's another one where the monetization exists.
Yeah.
But at no point do I really feel pushed to spend anything, because it doesn't get you much of anything other than cosmetic effects. Now, that said, you know, upping the cosmetics on your cards is what bumps your levels up, and the more levels you go up, you unlock extra little bits and pieces. But all of that, you know, you can just keep playing and you'll do the same thing anyways. So it just, if you want to expedite to get some specific things, they do, like, you know, some seasonal battle passy stuff, but, you know, which is kind of a neat way to feature like whatever's going on in the MCU if something's big, or just in the Marvel comics if something, you know, big events happening. I'm honestly really surprised that Marvel Snap doesn't do more with like MCU stuff specifically.
Okay. Yeah.
Really surprised, but they just don't. And I remember thinking the same thing too with Marvel's comics app as well. I'm like, yeah, that shocked me, because I opened up a subscription to that for a while too, and I was just really surprised that, like, when an MCU movie came out, I'm like, why is there not like a featured tab that's like, you know, if you enjoyed this and you want to check out the comics, these are good places to start with these characters, but it's not there. Now, that said, they do have some things where you can like search characters and all the issues of stuff that they've been in and where their first appearance was and the different series and where to start those series. But I'm like, why is there not just a straight up featured tab for this kind of thing? One would think, but
that would
again,
make sense.
It would, but I suspect somewhere there's a legalities issue in the separation between like the Marvel Comics division and the Marvel Cinematics, because those are not necessarily the same. So, but I don't know, just one of those weird things I look at and go, but why? But the big one that I've spent some time with this week, and and I'm glad you popped on because I was playing this and I'm like, this feels like the how not to of one that you and I really liked. I've been playing Abzu, and I've got a handful of hours into Abzu.
Okay.
And it's pretty. It's for the most part fairly lo-fi, kind of flat polygonal visuals, lots of pretty cell shading. It's pretty. Zoe commented while I was playing that the music sounds like a Miyazaki movie. So it's got like that pretty big sweeping orchestral thing. They do some really cool set pieces, but several hours in, I'm like, I'm literally just repeating the same cycle of things over and over. I'm like, okay, I get into a little area, a set piece, I find my little robot helper friend thingy, and then I go push a couple, like 2, maybe 3 buttons, and maybe I'll find a seashell, and then it sweeps you into the end of this set piece where, you give your seashell to the temple, and it opens a big sci-fi Lost Civilization underwater Egyptian door thing, and then it sweeps you into the next set, and you wash, rinse, repeat, and it doesn't really seem to deviate from that. And where I was thinking about you and our shared mutual love here was that this is the how not to of what Cocoon did really well, which was
that's interesting. Okay.
Because it does a terrible job of pointing you where you need to go. And instead, you just feel like you're wandering around. And some of that might just be inherent in the fact that it's underwater. And so at that point, it's the same thing as flying around in space. It's full 360-degree, navigation. But nothing seems to really stand out. And that's the only way they can really seem to do it, because they are all, Abzu is also no dialogue, no text, no nothing. And there's more to it in terms of complexity of the controls, not much, but obviously you have to be able to manage more in a 360-degree space like underwater or space. But it just, I'm like, I see what you're going for, and years later Cocoon got there, and you probably helped lay some of the groundwork for this.
Yeah.
The other thing too is that Cocoon was just infinitely more clever, because here there's not really puzzles to work out. It's just find the thing, push a button, go. And I spent more time wandering around looking for whatever the fuck hole in the floor that the button or the robot was hiding than I did actually figuring anything out, because there's not fucking anything to figure out.
Right.
It's like a faint echo of Cocoon. But I can see how this may have laid some of the groundwork for what Cocoon would become. And it's not like it was the same studio or anything. But I'm just, I don't know that the visual and the feel is gonna carry me through to the end on this. It just feels too hollow.
How long is it supposed to be?
I don't know. You're the king of games. How long to beat? I really hope it's not long, because I've been playing for a few hours and I'm just ready to be done with it. And if it's not that long,
2 hours.
Okay. So yeah, that should tell you something. I've spent too much time wandering around trying to find the stupid thing.
Right.
So I've got to be close to the fucking end then, and I may push through just to. But the other thing too is that, in terms of, I'm like, I can see you're trying to tell a story. You're trying to infer a story, but you're doing it way too vague. Yeah. There's not enough here. Cocoon managed it.
Right. And that's the thing. I mean, I don't know. The story is just very, you need to be on several things, a paraphernalia of some sort to get it. But
Cocoon's story is there, and I can peel that one apart. This
get it.
Just feels like they splashed a couple of things on the wall and said, "That's good."
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's from the art director of Journey. So, looking at these trailers and stuff like that, it does look gorgeous. And like, it kind of reminds me of that new hot, or I guess quote unquote new game, Dave the Diver, where it's like, you know, obviously underwater and you got to deal with all that stuff. But yeah, like I agree. Like the thing that I really enjoyed about Cocoon was the fact that it, you know, it did kind of guide you to one a direction or whatnot, but like
well, it didn't just guide you; it locked you.
Yeah, exactly. And then,
that was part of the brilliance of it, but it did it very organically.
Right.
That's why I sent you that video from Game Maker's Toolkit about why you never felt lost in Dread. It's the same principle in action here.
Right. And then what I also really enjoyed with Cocoon is like how all the mechanics just kept layering itself on top of each other.
They layered and stacked and interlaced.
Yeah. So it was really, and yeah, it made you feel good when you figured something out.
You felt clever.
Yeah.
It didn't just make you feel good. It pulled off the ultimate trick of a puzzle game, and it made you feel clever.
Yeah. It's just not an easy feat to do. And
no, it's not. And it's so accessible to almost anybody. Like I said, my 7-year-old, Olivia, can play Cocoon and figure it out almost entirely on her own.
Yeah.
The only times she stopped and asked me for help was with the boss fights, because that's just a dexterity coordination thing that she doesn't quite have yet.
Yeah.
And when they introduced a new mechanic, I would show it to her and she goes, got it, and she was off again.
Nice.
Every other puzzle she basically figured out on her own.
Oh, that's great. I mean, yeah, it's and
if my 7-year-old can figure it out and I can figure it out and feel clever figuring it out, you cracked the code.
Exactly. Both spectrums like can have that same feeling, which is really cool. Yeah. I agree.
Like, it was never frustrating enough that I wanted to pick up my phone to look up the answer to anything. I didn't. No, I take that back. There was one.
Yeah.
There was one, and it was only, I'm like, I know what to do here, but I can't figure out the order that they want me to do this in, and I didn't want to fuss with the trial and error, and it was the final door on Cocoon. I'm like, which order does it want the orbs? That was it. That's the only one I looked up just to verify. I'm like, I know what to do. Just tell me if I'm going front to back or back to front. That's it.
Right. I think that one, and then I had an issue with, it was near, I think it was in the purple world or whatever. With like when you had to get the timing right, because I didn't feel like they explained timing properly. Like I felt like all the other mechanics, they kind of, you know, you had opportunities to be like, okay, I get this mechanic, so I know I need to use it next. But there's this one particular one where I was like, okay, what am I doing? What am I missing? And it was that, like, it was just like, you need to make sure you put it, because it was like that thing that would grab the orb and take it away. And I was like, you had to like do it in a particular time, otherwise it gets screwed up. I was like, okay, I didn't feel like the game prepped me enough for that, but you know,
that's pretty minor in the grand scheme of it.
Yeah,
though. Like
exactly.
if that's the only niggling complaint, then you did really damn good.
Yeah.
So but that's what's been on Games of the Week for me this week. So I think this is a good place to wrap, but before we hit the break, a quick word about our awesome sponsor, Imaginary Authors. When you want to tell your story without ever saying a word, you want to walk in the room and turn the heads of everyone that you walk past, Imaginary Authors has got you covered with awesome fragrances and scents for guys, gals, and non-binary pals. They've got a little bit of everything. They've also got, if you love their fragrances, you're going to dig. They've got most all of their fragrances available in their perfumed candles, and they are expanding their line of soaps as well, including my personal favorite, my go-to signature scent they've just released as a soap bar now too, and I am so here for it. City on Fire, now available in soaps as well. Like, yes please. So, but that's Imaginary Authors. Links to their stuff in the show notes as well. And let's get ready for the third half of the show with The Break. And we're back with the third half of the show. This week, we're taking a trip down the warp pipe.
Oh, wow. Love these pipes.
And we're looking at the future of gaming, both games themselves as a consumable product, and the consumer side as an art form, and on the business end of things, what the future landscape is going to look like as, and I use this in the heaviest air quotes humanly possible, artificial intelligence starts making its way into the industry, especially into development. So, where do we want to start, gents?
Well,
Opening salvo, who wants it?
one thing that is kind of already worth pointing out is that AI, as it stands, is already in video games. Like, and there's no real way to get there's almost no way to make a good video game without it. Or at least not one without like an enemy character.
With a budget?
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Because if you want anything to interact with the player that's not in a predestined pattern, that's just like moving blocks or something like that, it's going to have some level of artificial intelligence to know that is player character. Go after player character or something like that.
So I think we should. Wes brings up a good point. I think we should narrow the conversation to
AI as a development tool.
Right. And what is it being used for now? Like, that's why I brought up the idea of procedurally generated things. That's technically
Right.
AI doing that, right? But that's not what we think about when we think about AI. We are thinking about it creating things, or for example, like quest lines or dialogue, or like, imagine if they had a game in the future that it might actually be a selling point at some point, saying like, this game was not created using AI.
Right. You know, and that was one of the first places my brain goes, is it's a very double-edged sword.
Right.
I could see this being really good for small studio indie development, for being able to generate art assets and things like that they don't have to, you know, shell out big bucks on to have handcrafted, bespoke. And that opens up new possibilities in terms of what smaller devs have access to in terms of scope and tools and, you know, just things to work with. But especially with the way things are now, and, you know, we may one day see it change in the future. You know, we've started seeing some of the first legislation on artificial intelligence here in the last few weeks, as of recording date. You know, and that's not to say that, you know, it's going to be the last. So, but the issue that, at least as far as AI generated images for art assets, pull from copious amounts of stolen material.
Right. And that's the whole thing with AI. Is it actually creating? Right now it's not. It is using an iterative process. So it'll scan, like, you like say, hey, to AI, make a Monet painting in this style or whatever. Like, I want a Ninja Turtle in the style of Monet. So what it will do is it will scan every Ninja Turtle painting or picture, and then every Monet painting, and then make an iterative thing.
Yeah.
And so is that really creating? And that's the whole point, is it really there yet? And I don't think it is, but it's very detrimental to humans right now, because it's taking jobs. It will take jobs away.
Yeah.
Very easily. And like we have to ask ourselves, as like a group of collective people, is that worth it to us to eliminate 30% of the jobs? And we might have unemployment of like 25%, and then we have to find other people work. Is that okay? Is that inevitable? Is that going to happen anyway? And if that is, go ahead, Wes.
Oh, sorry. This is like building on what you were saying. I should have let you finish, but like, another big reason we have to be very careful with this is that for a lot of people, video games are their passion job. Like, this is something they really, really love, because you kind of have to be in the video game industry. Making them is stressful. Like, technology, getting rid of jobs is nothing new. All right. Self-checkout is getting rid of cashiers at grocery stores, but we're not sitting here at least I imagine the four of us aren't sitting here protesting Walmart just because they have fewer cashiers and more self-checkout lines. Because
oh no, I refuse to use self-checkout lines.
Yeah,
I won't do it.
Yeah.
But
Rawls got a real standpoint on it. But I understand what you're saying, though.
But no one's passion is to be a cashier, right?
So maybe human beings, just maybe, I was just going to throw this out there. Maybe human beings only really care about it if it affects them personally. It's kind of how it works.
That's going to be the general consensus.
Right.
But I mean, there will be people who look deeper into it, but they'll be the ones that are kind of fewer and far between.
Sure.
Like I said, my big beef with it right now is just the fact that it's training and sourcing and iterating on stolen stuff.
Right, not licensed stuff. Like if it was licensed, I would have absolutely, honestly, no problem with it.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem is like all of us here, like we're creative in some aspects, and we create this podcast, we create other things. Would we want someone to come in and like scrape all World 1-1 podcasts, for example, and then AI shoot out a podcast that sounds like what we do? Because it could do it.
I would 100% be legit curious to hear an episode of our show spit out from AI as after it's been trained on 7 years of our shit.
Yeah, it would be interesting.
I want to know just what it would be.
I guarantee it wouldn't be wearing a fucking shirt.
Oh, we haven't had that episode yet where we're going to do
wearing a shirt.
The nipple episode. Remember we were going to do that? Ralph, remember that?
Oh, God.
We were going to do that episode where we're all going to be shirtless.
Uh-huh.
Hey, it's not too late. Not too late.
Oh,
there's a future topic discussion. The all-time greatest video game nipples. But no, I mean, I was gonna say I can see a future where you may start seeing stamped on cover art, ethically designed or ethically developed.
Mm-hmm. I could see the big companies using it just to save money, like the Call of Duty and Modern Warfare and all those kind of games are definitely going to be using a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
Considering it's the same fucking game over and over and over again anyway.
See, that's the whole thing. Like, now this brings up a good point. Like, I honestly wouldn't care if, like, for example, like side quests or like dialogue was generated by AI, and they had like a human actor like act the dialogue. Maybe I could see that, like them going through and like, okay, let's like pump out a first draft. I can see AI as an incredibly powerful tool where I could say, do this quest line, and does it, and I go back in as the creative and then edit it.
Yeah.
Make it better. I could see that. Now, I just don't understand. I honestly don't understand. This is my major hang-up with AI and people. I don't understand why a person would want something 100% created by AI. Because isn't part of gaming, isn't part of consuming this stuff, that like movies and everything, isn't that part of like the human experience? Like, we want to see someone's vision for it.
Yeah.
It's more than just content. It's more than just content to me. This is the way somebody wanted me to see this.
Right.
And I feel if we like just take AI 100%, we're throwing a big part of that out.
Absolutely. Like I said, I can see this being used to tremendous benefit for smaller devs that don't have the budget or could reappropriate budget from art to something else by subbing in AI designed assets, but at the same time I could see them being the ones with the biggest resistance to it too, just because they're the ones that would probably empathize the most with those that have had their work stolen by these compiler companies, and it just as opposed to, and I don't think it's there yet, but I think if we keep going, we can get it to a point where it will be functional and useful in an ethical manner, where we could be seeing studios using it for play testing, for for catching bug fixes and shit like that, or smoothing out some things in terms of graphical hitches, catching them and putting AI to the task of figuring out how to fix a bug in the code, or a visual hiccup somewhere, going, no, that shouldn't pop in here, or this is moving through something that it shouldn't, where it can understand that and figure it out. And then just teaching it to catch that, and then the next step being teaching it how to fix these things. That to me would be an ethical use of AI in development, for sure.
Crunching numbers, basically.
Yeah. Right, and don't get me wrong, that's something where if we can get there, that'll cause its own scale of job destruction. But
I would argue that is the natural evolution of what AI is. Like that's what it's going to do. It's going to do the calculus of. That's what computers did. Computers took a whole bunch of numbers and crunched them really quickly, so that I didn't have to I didn't have to be the person for 6
doing
months
it by hand.
Right, or the calculator, and that's what computers did. So I could understand AI doing that, but I also understand the business aspect of it, where they're trying to like Michael said, big businesses like Microsoft, now especially since they own Activision. I could see them employing AI to do their Call of Duty, do my storylines for Call of Duty.
Yeah.
And they could probably do 100,000 of them. And, it's all kind of the same.
Doesn't Bing now have its own Chat GPT version thing?
Yeah.
Where because they put a lot of money into
I actually have it on my PC where I can use the Bing Chat GPT offering for searching. It's almost uncanny. It fakes being a person extremely well. It's one of those things where there is going to be that uncanny valley with AI, where people are going to think like they're talking to a person, but they're not. Apparently, especially when you call large corporations, a lot of times, when you hit their service,
their phone tree,
some of that's AI.
Oh yeah, that's been for a while.
Right, and so that's what we were talking about. For that, fine, whatever, But when it comes to creating something with AI, I don't think I want 100% AI created product.
No, because AI can't really create.
That's what I'm saying.
At least not AI as we're defining it.
It's not AI yet.
There's no sentience, and sentience is required for 100% original creation.
Right. Now, the point is, when we get to that point, do we ever get to that point? I'm thinking we maybe do at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're very much probably one day going to get to that whole do androids dream of electric sheep territory. So, that's what my gut says. But in the meantime, though, do you think if studios are using AI in their development process, it should be required that they disclose that?
I think that definitely depends on how much of it that they're doing,
what's the number? Where's the line?
Right. When you say development, I'm assuming you mean to create completely new assets or completely new stories or make all the code. Because, for example, would AI upscaling something for a remaster or a remake to go from 480p to 1080p or to 4K, would that count as using it during development?
Apparently not. And the way I look at it, no. And here's why. And I'll say the line for me. It's taking a human created asset, making it better. It's not totally taking the human asset and then making something original just based on that asset.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's a fine line, and like we might have argument about who created what, but a human originally created the asset. It's just making it like 4K.
Right. I would argue though that shows that the line can't be at 0. You get what I mean?
No.
Yeah.
I agree. I totally agree. The line is not 0, and I also agree that the line moves in real time to whatever you're thinking about or whatever you're looking at. Like if you're looking at like poetry, for example, the line, like if you said, create me a poem in the style of, Emerson.
Right.
Now is that like truly creating that? And it's not. It's taking an iterative thing. Or you can say the GPT, like I said, hey, make an original 311 song. And it did. And it was actually pretty good. Because, 311's, that's 311. But you know what I mean? Like, is that the line?
Yeah.
Like, what is the line, right?
Michael, where's the line for you? What's the number? Or are you just waiting for Darksiders 4 to be cranked out by ChatGPT?
I think he would take it at this point.
Yeah, it'd be something.
He'd get a novel created by, a Darksiders novel.
There is a Darksiders novel.
Yeah, but you can get a new one.
All right, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
And we can write it in like 10 minutes.
Yeah. 5 minutes even, Do it right now. I'll send it to you.
All right, thanks. I think I have a feeling that, as I said, I think the big companies are definitely going to use it to keep pumping out their mediocre garbage. I don't think that indie companies are going to use it as much because, a lot of the indie games that come out, that's a passion project.
Mm-hmm.
Like Hollow Knight, like we're still waiting on Silksong because they haven't got it right yet. Things like that.
Right.
That's important to me.
Yeah.
Like as I said, I would rather them take all the fucking time they need to get it right, as opposed to punch some numbers into a fucking calculator and it puke up what they're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with that. Like I do agree that, especially like for example, like obviously like Team Cherry, like they have the money to be able to wait, but some people don't.
Yeah.
So I could see like more cash strapped, and you're right about garbage, like because I think people will realize AI generated content over original content, especially right now. You may not notice it implicitly, but you're just going to like.
It's going to feel familiar.
Something's going to be just a hair off.
And
right.
Hearing you mention there's like there are a lot of teams that can't afford not to actually made me think, like we think of all the indie games that get big, that even if they might not have made all the money in the world, we probably are familiar with them because the devs have put some level of resource into them. But there are also a lot of indie asset flips on the other hand, where they got assets from the Unreal Engine store or Unity store, and as a result they just put those in. So hearing you say that made me think, if we allow this to happen, while we want to say the indie scene will be free from them, it absolutely will not, because
shovelware is going to get 1,000 times worse.
Asset flips will just basically be, rather than paying $10 for a tree, it's you pay like $150, make me all of these assets or something along those lines.
And honestly, like I don't have a problem with art assets being made by AI, because the human is still creating the story, still creating the gameplay, still creating the game. Like if you want to take shortcuts on your art assets, go for it. I would do it. If I was a developer, I would absolutely do it. Because first of all, I suck at art, but I could probably make a decent game if given enough time. I just need the art. And if the art's only holding me back, I would definitely buy art assets through Unreal Engine 5, Epic Store and all that. I would do that. I have no problem doing that. I have a problem when you're trying to pass up a story as original and it's not. That's the problem for me.
Right. Well, see, for me, I think it's almost the other way around. I'm like, for me, the line is AI use in development. I think for me should stop at technical before it gets to anything artistic. Because anything artistic that it does, unless something changes from where we are now, which it might, but as it is now, anything artistic it does is going to be based on stolen work somewhere. And you can't do that ethically.
Isn't Scarlett Johansson suing?
Uh-huh.
Like something about an AI commercial or whatever?
Yeah, it's I'll send you a link. DeFranco covered that this week. I'll send you a link to the article.
And I don't know how many of you guys follow the indie animation scene on YouTube, but the pilot for a show called The Amazing Digital Circus came out recently. And there's a character on it called Jax, who's kind of the lovable jerk style character. And someone did in VR chat an almost perfect recreation of his voice in AI. And the voice actor had to step in and say, "Don't do that. This is the first time I have legitimately felt fear in my entire life."
Yeah.
Right.
I say AI and deep fake. That's the other thing that.
And you know what? Take this back just another notch. It just released this week. That new Beatles song. Have you listened to it?
No, I haven't yet. But I also don't like the fucking Beatles.
No, I know. But what I think is important is the story behind it. So that story. Now, this is I think a very positive thing for AI. The John Lennon recorded that track in 1979. Now he died in 1980, something like that, or 81. Yeah. So he recorded that track. When they were redoing all these demos that Yoko Ono gave to Paul and all them in the 90s for like the new Beatles songs, this was the only track they couldn't actually do because his vocals were intertwined so much with the instruments, and they used AI to actually separate it so they could remix it.
Right.
So so like even if you're not a fan of the Beatles, I think it's an important to listen to the song because it sounds like they're all in the same room, even though like two of them are dead, and they like recorded these like decades apart.
Yeah.
And so that's like I think like a tribute to AI. Like that's what AI can do.
Right.
Like
no, there's great things that you could do with it to advance the cause of art and history.
The song is called Now and Then, if you ever look it up.
I think it's kind of like that upscaling argument a bit, though, but applying to music. Because, well, obviously John Lennon can't consent anymore because he's dead. His estate still can.
Right, but they didn't create anything new.
Right.
That was just separating stuff. It was like, I'm just going to make it so I can mix this again in a better way. So, you're right, though. That's exactly that argument.
But like I said, I think that's where my line is for it. I think anything that crosses that line needs to come with a stamp of somewhere some more all art assets for this game were developed with artificial intelligence, or you go the opposite route where a game can be certified ethical, organic developed, I suppose you can call it, and put that stamp on the package instead. So, but in the meantime too, does this, if we get there, does it do harm to the people that work in the industry doing that kind of artwork for development in studios too, and where do they go? So, but because we, all throughout human history, we've experienced job destruction, but innovation also tends to create new jobs somewhere adjacent for those that have lost their livelihood to a technological advance. But there's always kind of been somewhere else on par for them to go to transition to. But with AI coming in, especially in the world of artistic endeavor, that feels like a very different thing, and a very potentially terrifying dystopian future for, job destruction and creation, for art as a species, even. Where could we possibly lose our own humanity in the creation and the world of art?
And that's the argument I was talking about. Like, do we even really want a machine to give us art? Because isn't, like, when I listen to a song or look at a painting, for example, like, I'm not just looking at the painting, or especially paintings. Like, I find myself sometimes just like zoning out, thinking about what was the artist doing,
right?
And if it's a machine, like, what is that? Is that even what we want? It might look cool, but is that really what we want?
But there's no soul.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, even if there was, would we really want it?
Yeah. Well, on that horrifyingly depressing thought, any final thoughts, gents?
My final thoughts just kind of, because this is such a rapidly evolving technology as we go, it's really hard to say for sure I'm on the right side of this. I feel fairly confident that I will never want AI to make its own art, simply because even if it can do that ethically, I still don't want AI to be taking away something that people are actually passionate about.
And the final thought for me on that is, I think of a lot of other texts that have come out, and the people that are alive at the time are like, no, we're not doing this. We don't like it. And then younger generations are just like, oh yeah, that's totally okay. And they start getting indoctrinated almost in like, yeah, it's fine. And there comes a point when they're like, look at those old guys. Like, they don't like this. Why not?
Yeah.
And so my problem with that would be like, how do we, if that's the case, like, can we stop it at that point?
God, I hope I don't count as being an old guy yet.
No, but I mean, 30 years from now.
No, your first CD was an Ace of Base.
Yeah.
That's the sound of a middle finger again. Michael, any final thoughts for the funeral pyre of the human endeavor?
No. I'm ready for most humanity to go away anyway, so.
Of course you are.
We've had our bright light.
We did, and we squandered
we fucked it up from the beginning.
Yep. Well, I think then I will just end this with, give it 5 years. I'm going to see handcrafted, ethically developed, stamped on a game that I buy one day, and I'm going to just die inside a little. But just from the fact that we have to make that distinction. But on that sour note, let's wrap this up. I want to say thank you to all my friends for coming and hanging out with me and talking about some artificial fucking intelligence.
Skynet.
Right.
We're all gonna die.
Thank you to our awesome sponsor, Imaginary Authors, for helping us put the show on this week. And thank you to everybody that tuned in. You can and should find us on all of your favorite podcatchers on YouTube. Come tweet at us on the Twitters. All the socials are down below in the show notes. And we'll catch y'all next week here on World 1-1 Podcast. Press start to engage your mind. Say goodnight, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Yo.
Peace.